today we're signing, this is very historic, an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile. This is a promise that you made throughout the campaign, and today we're keeping that promise. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin that the federal government already owns, so it won't cost taxpayers a dime. This is like a digital Fort Knox for digital gold. And premature sales of Bitcoin over the past years cost American taxpayers over $17 billion in lost value because we didn't have a long-term strategy.
Right.
Now we do. So.
And this is something you believe in?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
And the whole community believes in it.
Very good. And I made the promise, right?
Absolutely.
Well, crypto, my God. Just crazy out here. Good time to be in the content game. Let's get into it. So, yesterday we got this spontaneous video that just dropped and is super awkward, and I'm very big into propaganda and like trying to determine if there's reality behind these videos, and like everything from the off-frame voice to the weird posturing is like, man, this is like so set up to be a falsehood that I had to lean in that it was real. And what a crazy introduction. So as we get this coming from Reuters, Trump signs order to establish the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And we're getting, it's a little bit of a surprise, but I think it comes with some good news, which is that the previous announcements, the tweets from Truth Social, were not quite a fully baked idea. What this executive order covers is only government seized Bitcoin. It's actually the format that I most prefer of this reserve, which is that we're not using dollars to purchase any assets. It got very problematic when it was using dollars to purchase these shitcoins. And I will use that broadly speaking because that is just moving money from the hands of the many into the few, and is very confusing. Now, using seized Bitcoin, I think this is very interesting, and it does mean that the US is taking its first step into a long-term plan around digital currencies. That's how I look at the root of this and why I think it's the most effective. Of course, there is the narrative of Bitcoin is around to fix money. If Bitcoin and hard assets can help us fix our money supply, which is basically a response to modern market theory of printing capital and having that lever to basically produce and reduce cash, fiat, this strange thing that gives the government some mobility regarding the economy, but it also means that when debt cycles build up, when bad assets accrue, there's no real wipeout. There's no return to health, which is kind of strange. So we get into it. Now, we're talking about seized Bitcoin, right? Here we have a list as we're looking as far back as 2014, right? So this is some nice Bitcoin, and this is the sales of the Bitcoin, not even the accrual. I believe that first one from 2014 selling to Tim Draper, that's actually Silk Road Bitcoin. So again, that's Ross Ulbricht, who recently got released from his prison sentence. He ran the Silk Road, which was in a dark market for mostly drugs and things of that nature. He ended up getting pegged with 2 attempts at hiring a hitman. They were wild failures, and there's some story behind it, but really this was so early in the Bitcoin narrative that the judge just threw the book at him. Generally, a crime like this would get you, 10 years in jail, 11, something like that. They gave him life sentence, and all again for operating this platform. He wasn't the provider of the drugs. He wasn't the person doing the bad actions. He was maintaining the ecosystem. Now, one thing that we can see as we look over this, and this was mentioned in the film clip that I played at the beginning, which is that the total BTC seized is 195,000, which we sold for gains in dollars at 366 million. But when we scroll down here, we can get the current USDC value of all those Bitcoin sold, and that's 17 billion. So it's a lot there, guys. You can see that if we had kept up with the value accrual of Bitcoin, and who's to say that it would have accrued in the same way if we had retained them, we're looking at the majority of the cash being missed out on, right? Over $16.5 billion. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And of course, that's something to think about. And I think the approach of saying that keeping the seized Bitcoin for now as a mechanism to develop a long-term holdings idea, a framework, is fairly healthy. It's not that era of exploitation that I talked about previously. There is something of substance here, and it's very TBD. I think this will set us up for more positive conversations in the future. Of course, we get more official announcements coming out aside from that kind of TikTok-esque video, which is that Chairman Representative French Hill statement on the EO establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile, really just going over the concept that more people in Congress are signaling their approval of this action. So what's really important to take away here, the executive order that was signed was only able to be effective because it was relying on already seized assets. Any sort of spending cash in order to purchase, that requires congressional approval. So even if he wanted to do that, it was not an option that's on the table. What we're seeing now are some signals coming out of Congress that there are players in that camp that would be willing to support these initiatives moving forward. So this is sort of that dance of politics, and we will probably see more senators come out and again open this conversation, because eventually Congress is going to have to vote on something more robust than just seized assets. Now, one thing to note, last but not least, coming on here, David Sachs has been doing the rounds this morning, and it's just kind of adding some clarity to say that the Truth Social posts around the Bitcoin Reserve were really only made because those were the top 5 crypto tokens by market cap. I don't know what the truth is behind this, but I think it does align fairly well, just rattling off sort of top assets. I can tell you from behind the scenes, there is a lot of energy being put into trying to get assets in there, right? We are seeing some of these entities put a lot of capital, a lot of lobbying into getting their asset listed in that reserve. That is the thing we want to avoid, this like pure pay to play grift. That would be a negative. However, retaining the seized Bitcoin, I do think that's interesting. It's a concept. It allows us to build our reserves, to build a long-term plan without saying we're actually going to spend dollars for these Bitcoin, which is a little nutty because a Bitcoin is technically a dollar hedge. So anyway, we're evolving, we're maturing, we're having the conversation, and we're opening the floor to bigger ideas, to longer-term thinking, towards regulation and laws that can be passed through Congress in the appropriate way. And I hope that at the end of the day, we wind up with something very strong, very robust. Now, why is the market not moving? Everyone's looking at this. I do think that the concept of the Bitcoin Reserve has been long baked into the narrative here. And quite frankly, the market fucking sucks. Other than Michael Saylor just longing these huge yeets into Bitcoin, there's been no real movement, no demand for altcoins. We're practically in a stagnant market outside of Bitcoin. And again, Bitcoin comes directly back to Michael Saylor. So thank you there, sir. However, we're not seeing healthy market structures around alternative assets. I do hope that with new regulation coming from the SEC, first and foremost, if we get any sort of action from the presidency regarding US-made companies like having exemptions around long-term capital gains or things of that nature, we start to open the door to some really funky new bull material. So that's probably why we're not seeing a really great response to this executive order. However, it does move us forward in just having adult conversations around the concept. So with that, I say I'm going to leave this Friday bullish. I'm hopeful. And as always, good luck out there, and I'll see you next week.